Hi everybody and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today we're going to talk about the difference between avoidant attachment and personality level variables that make a person less willing to connect. And I think this is super important because attachment theory, much like narcissism before it, is tremendously in vogue, and that means that it becomes we start to not be able to think clearly about things and to think that they are cure-alls or, entire guiding philosophies and everything, has to be, understood through the lens of attachment, and it's just not true. So I'll be getting into that right after I tell you to subscribe. The most recent episode was on highly sexual women and alpha males and whether you really want to be with them. And if you do, what you would have to think about. So attachment theory. There are plenty of ways to understand people. Attachment style is one of them. Personality, though, is even larger. That's a whole field that, a lot of personality is genetically, inherited. And so understanding people primarily through their experiences with their caregiver does have its limitations because, everybody has an attachment style, but everybody isn't just an attachment style. And some of the focus on attachment theory makes people forget that there's like a wide variation and normal distribution of every personality trait. And so some people just cannot be changed. The reason that this is so pernicious is, in theory, if somebody was insecurely attached and they had great therapy and a loving partner, they would be able to grow more secure. But if somebody doesn't want to connect because of who they are as a person, their personality, then ain't nothing going to change that, right? No amount of therapy and no amount of loving connection with an intimate partner is going to heal them because they're not broken. They don't need to be healed. They are just someone who doesn't really like to connect. And so that used to just kind of be a thing. Like, there are some people that don't really like to connect. But nowadays, everything is also seen through an overly therapy-heavy lens. And I talked about that in my podcast, my subscriber podcast, Should Everybody Go to Therapy? And it's great, that people like therapy now so that people who need therapy can get it. But, nothing is everything in moderation. So the idea, I specifically see this with a lot of women that date these avoidant guys, and women are more aware of when somebody's avoidant because they're women. They're more psychologically minded. They've been reading quizzes about like attachment style, whether or not it was called that, like in Cosmo and Teen Magazine since they were 12 years old. So women will frequently be like, oh yeah, my fiance or my boyfriend is avoidant attachment, but he just needs to work through some stuff. He just needs to open up. I think that with enough love and care, he's going to become, more securely attached. And then, I meet the guy, or we're talking about the guy. He's super high on sensation seeking, which is an element of personality that is not something to be cured. That is just how the dude is. He just likes sensation. He likes extreme sports. He likes travel. He likes to experience shit, So he's not going to want to sit at home and cuddle, and it has nothing to do with his attachment style at all. He could love his mother and have had, a relatively normal, healthy upbringing. And yes, there are such things, us raised in dysfunctional families don't really remember that. But yeah, plenty of people have pretty good upbringings, and quite honestly, he doesn't like to sit at home. He has a low need for physical touch. Except sex. He's going to like sex. He's a young guy, right? In theory. So we're talking about your average woman that I encounter in her 20s or 30s that's looking for her avoidant boyfriend or husband to turn into a secure boyfriend or husband, which what she thinks that means he's going to really settle down. He's going to love to be domestic. He's going to love to cuddle. He's going to become romantic. He's not going to become those things. It's very rare, Right. I want to err on the side of conservative estimates that he's not going to change, because so few people do. So let me describe the personality traits further that can masquerade as avoidant attachment in our attachment-friendly current cultural milieu, right? So sensation seeking, high sensation seeking, low need for physical touch. Hyper independence, like really being very independent. Dislike of, what we call psychological mindedness. This is a variable, how aware somebody is and how interested they are in psychological stuff. They could be very low on that. They could be super hyper rational, like an engineering type or something like that. I get a lot of those guys. The wife brings them in and says they must have Asperger's. They don't have Asperger's. Some of them have Asperger's, not all of them. Some of them just really like math and really don't like intimacy, that's just who they are. And their father was like that, and their grandfather was like that, and that's just your son, if you have a son with that guy, may be like that. It doesn't matter how much love and cuddling you give them. And you got to think about this. Young girls that are dating are really excused from being naive in this regard because they haven't had kids yet, right? But some of us have. Most of us listening to somebody called Dr. Psych Mom have had kids. And so think about your children, right? You try to love your children. You're listening to goddamn Dr. Psych Mom, right? You're trying to grow as a person. You're trying to be a loving and good parent. Didn't you have some babies that were more cuddly and more independent than others? I certainly did, right? So that's personality level. Everything isn't about attachment. So I frequently get in therapy women that are trying to describe this avoidant attachment guy, but he isn't. He's a guy that just honestly, he loves her, but she's only going to be ever really kind of 10 or 20% of what he does or thinks about. That's just how he's wired. He's high activity, high energy, low need for closeness. It's not pathological. It has nothing really to do with anything but how he's wired. It's not on trend to talk about how much stuff is genetic. People and especially in our Western culture, to assume that you could change anything with enough time and effort. It's really hard to change your basic personality, especially because these guys don't want to. They don't really want to change their basic personality. They like it. And so what can frequently happen is that people are different attachment styles within different relationships because, imagine even if you were securely attached and you had to, for some reason, be with somebody who was very avoidant, it would drive you nuts enough to become kind of preoccupied after a while, right? Some people are like, no, I would be so psychologically healthy no matter what. You don't know no matter what, obviously. A shitty situation can make people act totally different. But the reality is, these guys, if they are made to stay with a woman because they don't have the either the balls to break up with her, or she's acting like she'll be okay with their personality but she's really not, or they get her pregnant, or whatever, and they're kind of end up in a situation like this, they can turn more avoidant, but that still wouldn't necessarily be who they started out as. They kind of started out as a high energy, high sensation seeking, low need for intimacy guy, just super a lot of natural adrenaline and some people, by the way, don't have the sensation-seeking component, but they just don't have the intimacy need. They don't have the desire for physical touch. They don't really have much. They just don't have a big need for love. People all aren't the same, and this is no matter what you do about it, people aren't going to be the same. Some people need and want more physical and emotional intimacy than others. So particularly young women who get very I mean, being like in your 20s is so funny in retrospect. You'd be like, oh my God, we've been dating for 3 years. If I broke up with him, it would be humiliating. I thought we were going to get married. I love him. I can't believe that he wouldn't want to commit to me. Of course he does. He says it sometimes. He says it when he's drinking, every few months. He says, he's even one time said something about that I would be a really good mother. So I'm really thinking that, I think it's his mom, really, I think she was really cold to him. And so, I think that with enough time and love, he's really going to blossom. I was reading Attached, that book, right? And I really think he's textbook avoidant. Yeah, maybe, but probably not. Probably he's a guy that just likes to do a lot of shit and doesn't value being in a relationship. Now, how can you tell if a guy is avoidant attachment? Women are on tenterhooks listening. And, of course, this isn't just for women. There's obviously, as I've written about avoidant wives, plenty of men get into this situation too. But the men don't start out usually in a situation coming to a therapist and at age 28 and being like, there's a problem. My girlfriend is avoidant attachment. Like, they don't fucking know. Like, this is like beyond not what they think about usually. Maybe everything's changing, as I always say with Generation Z. Maybe everything's going to change. But I never seen a man in his 20s, and I do work with them, come to me and say, I think that the problem is her attachment style. No, they don't even think like this. Women think like this, right? And so the point being, okay, what is then avoidant attachment? Avoidant attachment is when he seems to have a lot of ambivalence and conflict in his earliest family experiences. And he has a lot of negative attitude from that. So the classic example that is pretty prevalent is the man whose parents got divorced, right? And he has a lot of trust issues then because, let's say, his mother left for a time or his mother cheated, something like this. And so you can you don't need to be a psychologist to see it's like a direct arrow from some attachment injury that is very obvious to the man's current attachment style. And it's a man that you have tried to break up with him at least a couple times and he wants to come back because that's classic. So people who have insecure attachment, they stay stuck in the bad situation. The other kind of guys that I'm talking about with the personality where they just don't require like a lot of love and get really antsy when you try to constrict them and confine them and they just want to do what they want to do. Those guys, if you try to break up with them, they'll say no harm, no foul. I had a good time with you and I really realized I wasn't making you happy and I wish you the best. They're like fucking relieved. They're like, okay, get me out of here. I love this person. I'm obviously not making her happy. She's making me take all these attachment quizzes. I just want to go on my goddamn ski trip, go to my job, make some money, hang out with my friends. This shit is overwhelming. Those guys, they don't have attachment injuries. They just don't want to be married. That's like they don't really know how to tell you. They're not very mature. The woman they're dealing with is not very mature either, as is evidenced by the fact that she's like literally not looking at the red flags in front of her face that the man doesn't want to commit. Nobody's being their best self. Fine. But if it's an attachment issue that could potentially somehow be resolved with therapy, then the guy will have these things in his past. He has a lot of ambivalence toward his family. He has a lot of trust issues stemming from directly observable issues in his family, frequently involving some form of real kind of coldness, neglect, abandonment, something like that. Had to really be an adult at a young age, had to be hyper independent. And so he's like conflicted in your relationship with him. When you say you want to end it, he kind of freaks out, and then of course when you're back, then he goes back to being avoidant. And so then you feel really gaslighted, but it's not like he's trying to do that. He's somebody who's hooked into this pursuer distancer dynamic, right? So But do you hear kind of what I'm saying? What I'm saying is, okay, if this guy does have avoidant attachment, does he sound like a great catch though? I mean, like you'd be like, I mean, think about how funny it is, right? So I'm like, okay, there's these guys with a personality that they don't want to commit. Then there's some other guys who potentially maybe could get attachment issues cured, but they're even more wounded. They have a deeper history of being wounded in their family of origin. And so then there's women listening, and I feel for you, who are like, oh, good, good. He has a terrible childhood experience and lasting attachment issues that are so deep and conflicted. He's incredibly ambivalent about romantic relationships. Thank God, though, he's that and not the one that just doesn't want it, that just doesn't value relationships. Girl, what are you thinking? Think more clearly. You don't want to get involved with this shit either. Neither of these guys is who you want to be with. Neither one. What I want to point out is also the avoidant attachment guy. It's nothing near a straight shot to resolving this. And many people with avoidant attachment go to therapy and still stay pretty avoidant, although maybe a little bit better. Try, if you're not married yet, to think about that there are plenty of securely attached men out there. And if you're never attracted to them after your own deep work, therapeutically, you very well may be, because primarily women with low self-esteem go for avoidant men. We all been there, and you got to think about what you're setting yourself up for, which is a world of hurt, because the attachment issues are arguably even worse to commit to than the guy who just wants to go on his ski trips and make his money, because at least the guy who wants to go on the ski trips and make his money and has a personality where he doesn't need a lot of love. At least he's not going to be conflicted and angry about having his needs encroached on. He's not going to like it, but he's not going to be angry. The avoidant attachment guy frequently gets angry. That's even worse, quite honestly, when you think about committing to a long-term partner. Somebody who gets angry when they feel like somebody's trying to smother them versus somebody who's just perplexed and just wants to do his thing, which is more of the low intimacy need, securely attached guy, right? Who's one day, that securely attached guy, the one who likes to just do his thing, sensation seeker, he's going to marry a woman who likes the same thing, who likes to go about her business too, or who has exactly the same hobbies as him, and really likes to do the same activities, and then he'll be securely attached to her, but he's not going to be securely attached to you because you like to sit at home and watch TV and cuddle, and he does not ever like to do that. So it is a mismatch, but, he could be securely attached to somebody else. Mr. Avoidant Attachment is going to make you or somebody else miserable because he's so difficult to connect to, and he's so angry at the world from whatever experiences he had that made him avoidant attachment. So he's so angry at you for trying to be close. This is not something you need either. This is not a best case scenario. This is another bad scenario. If you are the classic woman that I work with, because there are so many that want very much to be in a romantic relationship with somebody who does like to stay home and watch your shows with you and cuddle, not all the time, but a large amount of the time, and likes to go on dates and likes to have sex and likes to be close and wants to talk about the future, the romantic guy that you want. There are these guys out there, but it's going to be very easy with them. And if you are not trained to think that a relationship could be easy, then you're going to ignore them and you are not going to like them in favor of the guys who are more difficult, that go along with what you were raised to think of a relationship is, which is a woman endlessly pursuing a man that doesn't want to spend time with her. And if you didn't see this, I'd be shocked. You may have seen it in the gender inverse, but there are very few women that get themselves into these situations where all they want is to be romantic and close and cuddle, and then they can't find somebody because so many guys want this. So many guys do want this. That's real. That's reality. So many guys really do want to be in love. And in fact, the number one reason guys come in unhappy in couples counseling is because their wives aren't romantic to them. Sex is a proxy variable, as I discuss endlessly, for what they really want, which is open expression of love. So you can certainly find these guys, but if you consistently find yourself drawn to guys who don't want to hang out and be close and be loving in the way that you want, therapy can really help. It can really, really help. I mean, women like this are meant for therapy. Like, they do so well in therapy. They like nothing more than talking about feelings. That's the fucking problem, is that the guy never wants to talk about feelings. Well, therapists love to talk about feelings, and you'll talk about them and think about them and get to a place where you can understand why you keep self-sabotaging by going for one of these two bad types of guys for you, one of which is actually avoidant attachment, and has a 1% chance of like resolving into a securely attached guy, like maybe not 1%, but it's not much more. They always kind of stay avoidant, by the way. They stay kind of on the avoidance side. So therapy can help, but why are you going to get yourself into a situation where they're always going to be on the side of avoidant? They could get closer to the middle, but that's never going to be enough, because at some point you're going to wake up, realize your value, realize that there are men out there that want to be close, and be so angry at yourself for not waiting till you found one. Or you'll be with Mr., spends 90% of his time outside the house because, he doesn't really need closeness. And he's a nice guy and he loves you, but he never ever wants to spend as much time together as you do, which is also going to make you unhappy. So if you are one of the very few people that is, able to be self-aware enough to say, I got to get into therapy to change this pattern, then good. Then let this be a wake-up call to you to do that. You could change yourself a hell of a lot easier than you could change any of these men. And there are so many men that just want to hang out and be close. Not that they don't do anything else. Of course, they have jobs, they have hobbies, they have whatever. But their default is to want to be close. This is a thing. This is real. Women know this if they grew up in happy families with fathers who wanted to be around their mothers. If you didn't, and you are one of us adult children of dysfunctional families, then you've never seen this, so you don't believe it's real. It's real. I promise to you, it's real. This really is real. So it's real as it gets. So yeah, and so many women, when I publish things like on Instagram and what have you, where I'm like, there are guys out there that actually want to be nice and be close. They're like, really? Like, really? Like, they message me, really? Is that really true? Because they were not raised seeing any such thing. And of course, there's a male equivalent as well. Guys who never saw their mother be nice to their father, so they assume that all women are mean to men. And then, of course, what do they find? A woman who's mean to them. All right. Well, I hope that this was interesting to you and let you think about things in different ways. And please do subscribe. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, basically everywhere that is a platform I exist. And I will talk to y'all soon. Have a great day.